I personally think cash flow is king, and understanding your cash flow is extremely important. Tools like Pluto make it very simple because you can see what's coming out.
Welcome to Greater Than the Sum, the series where we demystify what it takes for small business owners in Canada and the accountants that support them to get control of their finances. I'm your host, Mark Cassini, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Pluto. Pluto is an all-in-one payment automation platform that automates your payable and receivable workflows. If you're a small business owner in Canada who's ready to take control of your finances, or an accountant looking to spend less time on manual tasks and more time as an advisor, then you're in the right place. Join me as we uncover the secret to making your business greater than the sum of its parts. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Right on. So let's get into it. So if you could just tell me your name, your role, and where you work.
So I'm Sean Friedman. I'm the founder and president of Freightsy. We are a logistics startup based in Toronto and Guelph. And I started the company in March of 2020, and we're still continuing to grow.
Fantastic. And what would you say is the mission of Freightsy?
Well, our name, Freightsy, which a lot of people have a hard time pronouncing, is just simply a matchup of the words freight and easy mixed together. And we really like to make the shipping process easy for shippers. We help them move commercial goods from A to B all over North America.
And what advice would you give to your past self before opening your own business?
Bring more cash. You know what? I would just say go for it. I would say that you're not going to get everything right, especially on the first go of things. There's going to be unexpected wins and losses. So I would say just take the first step towards doing what you want. You can figure things out as you go in some capacity, but as long as you have a solid structure in place of what you're trying to accomplish, you don't have to sweat all the little details. They will come together for you.
So Freightsy launched in March of 2020, which was obviously a very hectic time globally, right at the start of the pandemic. Talk to us about how those early days and what launching a business in the midst of a global pandemic was like.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think about this all the time, actually. I think it was great because it forced a lot of constraints on us. It forced us to be crafty and smart, and we didn't pivot our business model, but we pivoted the way that I envisioned things turning out. We had to switch to a lot of remote stuff. We had to really lean on the IT systems that we had. Some of them were purchased off the shelf, some of them built in-house. And it forced us to be really creative, and it forced us to do more with less, which I think is a really good skill any entrepreneur, any business owner should have in their tool set.
So you're responsible for launching Canada's first carbon neutral program for shippers. Can you explain what this initiative has been able to achieve?
Our program is quite simple. Shipping emissions are usually the second largest source of emissions for most businesses. Usually the number one is energy, but for some clients, transportation is the number one. So I saw it as a real problem that we could address. The way that we handle this is through carbon offsetting, which isn't perfect. It has some controversies, but I don't at the moment foresee a better option available to us. The way that our program works is first we measure the emissions caused by shipping for clients who are enrolled in this program. We can get this data simply from getting the miles traveled on shipments, the mode of transit, whether it's rail, truckload, or whatever, and the distance. From those points, we can infer how much CO2 is emitted, and then we offset those costs through carbon offsetting through our partner Cloverly, who are incredible. We're currently working on doing a deeper integration with Cloverly so that the data and the calculations can be done in real time for our clients. We also split the cost with our clients 50-50. It's important for me to not make money off those transactions. We want to be as transparent to the clients as possible. So we really see it as a partnership. And the cool thing is we give clients an opportunity to pick which carbon offsets they want to support.
So think back to a time when you felt like you didn't have control over the cash coming in and out of your business. What kind of challenges were you working through as a business at that time?
Very early, I was really fortunate. We got a few big accounts right off the bat. And the business grew quite quickly. The numbers were much bigger than I anticipated. And we were writing a lot of physical checks through our online banking portal. And the problem with checks, sometimes they would be cashed twice if we're really unlucky. If we're just regular unlucky, they would all be cashed at the same day. We would have no control over what's coming in or what's coming out of the business. On the receivable side, we've been fortunate, but our clients typically pay us within 25 to 30 business days. We're trying to pay our vendors much quicker because it's really important to have a really strong credit rating in our industry. So yeah, there was, as the numbers grew quickly, a lot of cash was going out the door. We didn't know when it would be, when those checks would be cashed, and like what our cash flow situation would be like. So it was difficult to kind of plan, okay, how much cash do we have in the business? Can we put to use to hiring someone? Can we put this to use to building something or investing in something? It was really difficult until kind of Pluto came on the scene.
That's great. And I think what you've highlighted is, often a misconception about checks. I think there's a lot of people who feel checks are one of the most secure ways to get paid. It's, almost guaranteed funds, especially if it's a certified check. It's more secure and safe than carrying around wads of cash. And you get it and can deposit it the same day you receive it from the client. But I think in what your kind of experiences has highlighted is that, sure, there's benefits to using checks, but there's also some inherent risk that you don't really know about until you actually start to experience them yourself. So I think you highlighted this idea of clients cashing checks all at once. You have genuinely no control over that, right? Like, it's near impossible to have that conversation with the client to say, hey, can you maybe wait a couple of days before you cash that, for a variety of reasons, not only, the reputational risk that you're putting yourself at. It's good to hear that those are lessons, obviously, you've had to learn the hard way, but that you've learned and adapted to. And I'm sure there are other, business owners and people overseeing business finances that have yet to learn those lessons and will likely at some point, and that, there is a path forward. There are alternatives out there that can help you avoid those, or at least navigate through them.
Oh yeah, Mark. I mean, I would say it'd be virtually impossible to tell our vendors, not to cash the checks on a certain day or just wait a little bit. I mean, it's almost like you send the checks off and just kind of kiss them goodbye. And you know what I mean? And there's so many problems with that as well. We would also have a lot of vendors contact us on a daily basis saying, hey, when are we getting paid? And then we would have to dig through all the records, like our bank provides us with statements and images. We'd have to dig through them and actually find, it actually turns out we have paid you on this one. It cashed this day, or, we mailed that one 3 weeks ago. It should have arrived. Let's do a check search with our bank, and then let's cancel the check. That's going to cost us about $30 each time, and only for it to turn up the next day. So there's all kinds of administrative issues with that. Whereas now we get a clean portal. It's white labeled, which I don't think Pluto talks about very much, but that's huge, to be honest. And it's very clean. We know it integrates to our system. We know what's going on, and we know how much cash that we have. We can look like in a month out, because typically we're writing checks about 30 days out, and we can see, okay, this is what we've got to play with this month. It's really useful.
Tell me about the manual, outdated payment workflows you had in place at Freightsy and what impact this had on your business. What was the moment when you realized, hey, I need a new approach?
Yeah, it was a gong show, to be honest. It became quite obvious when we were spending so much of our time dealing with paying vendors. It wasn't giving the experience. It wasn't making things easy, like our name implies. And it really wasn't creating a great experience for our vendors. It felt like we needed a change really when the volume ticked in, like our second year. We had a really big jump in sales, and that it became very obvious that we needed something better.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I think for me, and I'm sure for our listeners, what it highlights is how important the overall experience with your business impacts your brand and how you've positioned yourselves within your market. We highlighted that the business's name is a combination of freight and easy. And while the core experience can feel very easy, anything around it that doesn't feel easy or friction immediately detracts from the value proposition that you're trying to put forward. So it's amazing how even things is what people think is transactional is getting paid or sending payments. If that experience is at all less than optimal or suboptimal, how that can really have an impact on your brand.
Oh, absolutely. And when I say vendors, I'm mostly talking about trucking companies like that are working with us continuously. And the cool thing is once they're set up with Pluto, they only have to do it once. So they plug in their bank details and it's set. That becomes part of their ritual, and it becomes so easy for them. They know that they're going to get paid on a certain day as well, which is an interesting point, is we do a lot of business with large, in our industry, it's called LTL or less than truckload. So think FedEx or T-Force, carriers you would probably know like XPO. And when we have invoices from them, typically it can be up to like 50 shipments on one invoice. And so we would often previously have to write one big check. And then there wasn't enough room on the check to write all the pro numbers it's attached to. Whereas now the carrier gets remittance from Pluto with all the invoice numbers, our load numbers, their pro numbers. That's huge. They love that. And we've gotten comments like, this is so easy. And they're not hounding us for payments because they can see when they're getting paid. And even if the payments were 30 or 35 days, they don't care because they see that we have a system in place. They know that we're organized. We're not just writing checks whenever we have cash in the bank.
So technology is one of your company's 5 pillars, and it's obviously an incredibly important foundation for what you do. What factors did you consider when choosing a new solution to integrate with your existing transportation management systems? Walk us through what that adoption looked like and how you navigated around any specific implementation challenges.
Okay, so I'll take that question in 2 parts. So what I'm looking for when we do an integration with our TMS, so to understand something kind of technical, TMS stands for Transportation Management System, and it's kind of the central heartbeat for a company. Everything flows through that. So when I'm looking at integrations for it, I'm looking for our TMS to set the pace and the other vendors, the other pieces to fall in line with it. So I'm looking for simplicity. I'm looking for something that's going to, optimize the workflow for my employees. The second part to that question, the cool thing is with our TMS, and this is a shout out to Brokerware by 3PL Systems. They're a wonderful company. They do all their integrations in-house, which is not the norm for our industry. So we will look at working with their team, their development team that they have in-house to know our product inside and out. And then we will connect them directly with, in some cases, Pluto. The awesome thing about Pluto is that they had a really good airtight integration with QBO. QuickBooks Online is our accounting system. I worked with my bookkeeper who knows, our business inside and out. Her and I worked on the integration with Pluto, and I remember going live and being absolutely terrified of what was going to happen. Like, we set everything up to make a sandbox. Like, we did a sync, we created an invoice, and I really held my breath because I didn't know what would happen. But we did a transaction. Everything flowed into Pluto. So we saw we needed to pay that vendor. We paid that vendor. We did a sync, and then the transaction number flowed back into our TMS. Like, that was huge. Like, we were both couldn't believe our minds. Like, we were both extremely excited when this happened. And then gradually, like the next day, or that afternoon, we did some more, and we just never looked back. We were extremely excited.
I love that. And what I love so much about it is it highlights a couple of things. So one, just the general feeling of how relieved you can be when technology just works the way that you think it should. I think we've all had experiences where you think it's going to go one way, and then you press the go button and things go south very fast. So I'm happy to hear that wasn't the case for you. But also, I think more importantly is it highlights the importance of the partnerships and seeing, the integration of new software and technology as exactly that, right? You mentioned the relationship you have with your TMS, I believe you called it, to work closely with you to build custom integrations with, QBO, and then ensure that it's speaking properly with, Pluto and on both ends of the equation. But then on the human side of it, you mentioned the conversation with your bookkeeper, your accountant rather, and how important that side of the equation is to make sure that they are looped into conversations to ensure that when you do ultimately go live, they are one of the first people on the front lines to identify when things don't go well. Hey, this looks funny. This shouldn't be happening this way. And then having that loop between, again, your TMS partner to address any issues. So I think that, again, what your answer really highlights is the importance of those partnerships, not only between the technology, but also the people making sure those technologies are working as they should.
Absolutely. And I will say too, the ROI for doing that, was off the charts. So say, our bookkeeper may have put in maybe 20 hours roughly of just work and testing. And I mean, this is paying for itself within a few days. It's unbelievable.
Right. I think you're spot on. A lot of times people can get caught up in the upfront cost of integrating a new software solution, right? You mentioned 20 hours. I'm sure that wasn't, cheap to pay for your accountant to do. But if you're able to see past that initial investment and what the long tail return is, it can make sometimes those bigger implementation costs feel a little bit more palatable. And on that note, I'm curious, since making these changes to how you manage your payment operations, what impact have you seen on your own business growth?
Oh, it's been great. We've continued to grow because we've removed that bottleneck on us. We put the systems in place so that our accounting team, which is really small, they can focus on more high-level tasks, like ensuring we're getting paid for every shipment, reconciling different items, a number of different things. There's a lot of high-value functions that they can do. One of them is, not only do we have our regular vendors being paid through Pluto, but we also use the Pluto capture tool to pay vendors who aren't carriers. So if you can think of maybe legal bills or the cleaners, stuff like that, that's huge because we scan it, it makes it easier. And it actually did prevent a fraud situation from happening. About a year and a half ago, when we were still doing payments through Interact e-Transfer, a bad actor had spoofed my email and had told them to make a payment right away to some bogus IT company. And the payment was put through, but for some reason, they needed a security password. So by good luck, we saved about $20,000 US. So going forward, our solution was, okay, this won't happen again if we use the capture tool every time, because then there's a second set of eyes to actually audit the invoice and make sure this is a legitimate charge to the company.
Absolutely. You're right. It's the death by a thousand cuts analogy, right? In a day, you might be manually processing a handful of payments, and it might feel at any given moment, sure, that took me half an hour, an hour. That's in the grand scheme of the day, not terrible. But then when you multiply that out 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, barring holidays, it's a significant percentage of your time that gets wasted with things that, to your point, can just be automated, or at least you can put processes and systems in place to make those, transactional actions faster and require less attention. And even on the flip side, sometimes those processes, while not only saving time, can also save you from potential serious financial consequences had those processes not been there. So I appreciate you sharing that, because it's not often you hear, situations where, through no fault of your own, things turn south. And in software and the people behind those software, kind of swooping in to save the day and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to shift gears ever so slightly to talk about, in more detail, some of the financial wins, but also, some of the fails that come with implementing those new solutions or existing in a world prior to those solutions, being set up online. So, reflecting on your early days building Freightsy, would you be able to share a financial decision that, didn't pan out as expected? And what did this experience teach you about managing cash flow?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. I would say it's really important to have hire the best lawyers you can afford, hire the best insurance brokers you can get. I would say it's really critical to surround yourself with a good professional network. I would say the mistakes that I've made as a business owner have been from sometimes and I'm not trying to divert blame for myself. Believe me, there's enough to go around. But I would say it's from not having the best professionals in your corner. For example, our lawyer, we have two lawyers on retainer, and one of them said to me, look, I might be expensive, but wait until you hire a cheap one and you tell me how expensive that is, right? So I would say some of those mistakes have been around maybe cutting corners in that area, not having the best professionals. So it takes work to get the best professionals in your corner. I really do recommend going to networking events, asking around, attending seminars. If you're lucky to live in a city like Toronto, there's always different seminars and networking events going on, different conferences. I really recommend going out to those when you're starting out and building a professional networking, taking time. So on the win side, for us, it was just generating new business. It's very straightforward, getting new accounts in the door, growing the business organically. For me, I've really prioritized, because our business is unique and we're dealing with so much, we're dealing with shipments in some cases that are worth upwards of $1 million or more. It's really important to put that level of care into everything that we do. So it wasn't a huge priority to grow really quickly at all costs. I really wanted to grow in a managed way. So for us, it's just been kind of slow or sustainable growth, I would say.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think you hear from a lot of business owners and founders go through the pains of growing too quickly and not being at the stage of, the business's life cycle to really support that rapid growth. So I'm curious, were there any kind of signals, or are there any, indicators that you come across in looking at the business's finances, or maybe just its operations, where you look at it and you say confidently, yes, now is a time where we can take on more clients, or, hey, we're in a position where we could, but we need to do X, Y, Z. What does that look like for you when you're making that decision?
Oh, absolutely. I personally think cash flow is king, and understanding your cash flow is extremely, extremely important. Tools like Pluto make it very simple because you can see what's coming out, and then we know what realistically we can expect coming in. Having an understanding of your cash flow statements, being able to understand all of your statements, your balance sheets, is extremely important. I don't think the excuse of, oh, I'm not a numbers person really holds up as a business owner. You have to take the time to understand your financial statements and understand your financial picture and spend time with your good accountant. Set up a meeting quarterly, set up a meeting monthly, whatever it takes, understand where you are, because that is really, cash flow is king.
Yeah, and I think if I could tie that back to a previous comment you made around surrounding your people with professionals and having the tools in place to make their lives easier, on the whole, if you take those actions in combination with looking at your cash flow, you're kind of allowing the people who you're paying for that strategic advice the time to actually give it, right? If you're just assigning them the transactional, hey, we need to pay this vendor, or we need to process this invoice, or we need to follow up with this client because maybe they haven't paid on time. Again, like as we said earlier, you're taking away the time that they could be spending on providing you the strategic guidance to say, hey, now you're at a scale and size, and your cash flow is looking healthy enough that you could start looking at taking on new clients. And, like you said, if you're not a numbers person per se, even surrounding yourself with people who can help you become that numbers person, or at least make the numbers more approachable, can make that difference between, as you initially said, growing too quickly and growing at a sustainable pace.
Absolutely. And I'd also add, for example, a professional accountant, they have seen it all. They have seen the highs, they've seen the lows, and they have seen businesses at all stages of growth, right? And it's so easy to get siloed into your own world, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you're living, breathing, you are in your business. But it's so refreshing to have a professional who's seen you, has seen a business at your stage, and can give you that advice. It's really a game changer.
Absolutely. So appreciate you, as I said, Sean, giving us an overview of the wins and maybe the failures that come up in any aspect of running a business, specifically the financial side. So let's change focus and get into the kind of rapid fire portion of our conversation. So what would you say are the common cash flow challenges in shipping businesses, and how can automation address them?
Common challenges have to do with simply the timeline of some vendors getting paid. Some clients paying. Some clients are stronger than others. In this case, I really recommend doing your diligence and using a credit rating tool to understand where your clients are at, such as DMV. I also recommend looking at receivable insurance. There's a lot of great options. EDC, Export Development Canada, offers some as well. So that way, in some cases, they will insure up to 90% of your receivables.
That's great. And what role do you see AI playing in freight companies' financial forecasting?
I see them playing a role in the auditing side. For example, an invoice comes in and our software can identify if there's a discrepancy between what we're being billed and what we're expecting to being billed. And then we have to go in and make the adjustments. I could see AI taking a much bigger role in that area. So speeding things up on the auditing side, that would be huge.
What advice would you give to a logistics company just starting to explore digitizing its finances?
I would recommend that they look at automating some of the low-hanging fruit. Some of the easy tasks that they could automate, I would look at getting those easy wins first. And I would also recommend focusing on one thing at a time. So let's say they're looking at automating their accounts payable, focus on that. Then once that's done, move on to the next. Don't start another thing until you finish the first one. I find that that's the best approach when doing IT integrations and IT in general.
Love that. Similar to your advice on sustainable growth, right? Do things at a sustainable pace. Don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Let's close things out with a couple of remaining pieces. If you could offer one piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs or small business owners, what would it be?
I would tell them to summon the courage to believe in themselves. I know it seems funny, but when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to have big shoulders sometimes, and you really have to believe in yourself and believe in your vision. There's going to be times where you completely doubt yourself, and you need to have an unwavering belief in yourself and what you're doing. That doesn't come from outside sources or validation. You have to have the internal validation to keep going and to find the strength to start something. And good luck as well.
I was intrigued to read that since its launch, the business has published a children's book and a release playlist as well as a vintage t-shirts. What was the motivation behind those ideas? And also, as a bonus question, do you have any favorite song from the playlist?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, for sure. So from the training playlist, I would definitely say the Danger Zone song, like from Top Gun. I love that song. I sometimes run, and I also do something called rucking, which is like walking with a heavy backpack. And I always put that song. It's like my pump-up song. So yeah, we did publish a children's book. We have another one on the way. All proceeds of that book go towards children's literacy. We do a lot of quirky things. And for me, it's important because we're in a very mature and entrenched industry. I like to have fun. It's unexpected. And humor is definitely the last thing you would expect from dealing with a transportation company. In many ways, the way we do things is quite conservative. We manage our finances responsibly. We pay our vendors on time. We do what we say we're going to do. We provide a great experience for our clients. But they're often caught off guard by our whimsical style. So we do have another one coming out. It's in print, by the way. So I'm going to do a little shameless plug. All proceeds of this are going toward children's literacy as well. But we have a book it's a book and a puzzle. It's called The Freight Gods. It's a mix-up of the Iliad and the Odyssey, classic Greek literature, meets transportation. So if you go on our website now, you'll see a little bit of a teaser. You'll see some of the characters who you'll see in the story. So I know that if you have kids or if not, you will enjoy this work, which will be up very, very soon.
Awesome. Well, Sean, last but not least, where can people learn more about you and Freightsy?
Sure. They can visit our website, freightsy.com. We also have an Instagram account. We have a blog, which we publish some of the fun playlists and stuff like that. And we also have a newsletter, which I believe you can be signed up from our website, as well as LinkedIn. And you can just add me to LinkedIn as well. I'm on there.
Fantastic. Well, Sean, I really enjoyed our conversation today. A lot of great insights around, surrounding yourselves with the right professionals and people to build those relationships, marrying the relationships with those people and the technology that they use to make their lives, not only for the business, but their own lives better, as well as, the ideas around sustainable growth, one thing at a time, and kind of approaching things in a methodical way, especially when it comes to implementing new solutions, whether they be financial oriented or otherwise. So appreciate the time today and for you sharing all your insights with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
That's all for today's episode of Greater Than the Sum. I hope you all got some great takeaways from our guest. Remember, taking control of your finances is within reach, and it's not as complicated as it seems. If you liked this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can check out more about Pluto on pluto.com for resources, tips, and advice on how to get control over your cash flow. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like to discuss, let us know on LinkedIn, Instagram, or X. See you next time.